Hey Craig, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
So you are the CEO of Deepfield. Tell us a little bit about your company. Where does it come from? How long has it been around? What's in the DNA there?
Sure. So Deepfield is about 4 years old. The DNA of the company comes out of equipment vendors, Cisco and Juniper, other network analytics and security vendors like Arbor Networks, companies a little more specialized like Keratin and Packet Design.
Yeah.
So a real cross-section of both carrier and large enterprise DNA.
And it's an analytics company, and what's the differentiator for you?
Sure, I think of ourselves as a next generation network management and analytics company.
Okay,
Meaning
cool.
that in the past, you could do network management, you could run S&P on interfaces. Today, given the complexity of services, given the complexity of data centers, given virtualization, management really requires a very healthy dose of sophisticated, scalable analytics, as well as integration with orchestration. So I think what I think we're doing is really the evolution of how different providers, as well as large content, large enterprise, manage their infrastructure, manage their networks.
One of the problems which our audience service providers tell us about is that they're really overwhelmed by information on their network. How do you avoid just becoming another wave in this cycle of information which is washing over them right now? How do you help them make sense of all of that data, right?
Oh, sure. So, I think that this is a problem that's only gotten worse. I actually started my career on the NSFNet backbone, one of the first backbone engineers, back when the T1 internet would go down. And even back then, we were monitoring the network with S&P.
Right.
When we lost a large part of the network, the issue wasn't that we didn't have alarms.
Right.
We did. When you lose the entire US, you know about it. The trick is knowing what happened.
Right.
And even going back to the early 90s, just understanding amidst all the alarms, what was actually happening to enable you, of course, to quickly resolve the issue as a problem. Of course, we no longer have T1 internet, and we no longer have simple topologies.
Right.
We now have a lot more complexity with content distribution, with data centers, with virtualization. So if the problem was bad in 1995, it is orders of magnitude more problematic today. And I think the challenge is not thousands of alerts, but really always understanding the context, understanding how interfaces map to points of presence, map to data centers, map to services. And indeed, that's a lot of the value proposition we provide, which is not just collecting the data, but to be able to make sense of it in real time.
Right. And I mean, so is a lot of the focus of your work on the interface itself, on how that information is presented up to the service provider?
Yeah, I think if you look at network management tools today, there is a very significant body of legacy infrastructure that, quite frankly, really hasn't changed that much since even the 80s.
Right.
Even some of them still have Windows 95-esque UIs. But I think that's just part of it. Clearly, the interface clearly is different. But it's also the way that people build services. It's about the APIs. It's about the northbound, southbound interfaces between analytics and orchestration. It's about the engines underneath that can go across different domains, that can understand topology, that can understand services, understand performance. It is about taking what used to be hundreds of different devices in the data center, hundreds of different appliances doing KPI, doing performance, doing security. All of these different silos, typically all with different UIs. Those sorts of approaches really don't scale in 2016. And increasingly, you are seeing systems in a push for much simpler topologies and systems that now can orchestrate and deal with that complexity. So that really is where Deepfield plays quite a bit, is we deal with all of this complexity, different devices, different data sets, and abstract it and present the user with APIs both to other systems as well as our own UI, where we spend a lot of time to address this level of complexity.
Are you vendor agnostic? Do you operate in a sort of heterogeneous environment?
Yeah, a lot of what we do is provide that layer of glue between different routers and switches, between DNS servers, between routing, VMs, back office systems, and really deal with a lot of that complexity, much as you'll see in the consumer space. Different vendors have taken the complexity out of banking, or finance.
What do you think about the whole virtualization revolution and the move to telco cloud. Is that a driver for your business or just another headache for the service providers to deal with that you can help them with?
Well, clearly, I've been in the network space for a long time, since again the early days of the internet. It is clearly a very disrupted market where you're seeing both a tremendous amount of innovation, including our own company. So I think that the trend towards virtualization, the trend towards treating now, not dealing with individual devices, but APIs and orchestration, really is a very exciting opportunity. You are seeing a lot of investment from the carrier space, from the content providers, and it's clearly a space where we see a lot of opportunity to help with that transition.
What type of service provider are your solutions most popular with right now?
So again, we're a fairly young company, but I think just in the last 2 years that we have had product in the market, we are in give or take 80 to 90% of US cable.
Okay.
We are in the top US fixed line and transit.
Right.
We are in the top content distribution providers. We are in the top game providers and the top content video providers as well.
Is there something in common between all of those networks that they're all using your products for?
Yeah, I think that all of them have a certain level of complexity and scale. All of them are dealing with customers or subscribers. All of them are managing heterogeneous infrastructure. They're all managing lots of data, and they're all struggling with this growing level of complexity and scale of services in 2016. So I think we've been very successful as we are dealing with very large infrastructure, whether they be telecom, or whether it be game or video, in helping them manage some of that complexity.
When you're talking to a potential customer or your salespeople are talking to a potential customer, how do you sell the product? Do you sell it based on, because you wouldn't just sell it based on visibility and network intelligence. I mean, usually this comes down to money, either saving it or making it.
Yeah.
What's the business rationale when you're selling your technology?
No, I think that's a good question. So, we very much have a solution that can provide a range of solutions, a platform. But typically, we are brought in with one of 3 or 4, we call them venomous use cases.
Okay.
They are use cases where there is some amount of business motivation, whether it be gain or, financial cost.
Right.
So, for example, in the telecom space, we are addressing service assurance problems.
Right.
Typically, they will have deployed hardware and just racks and racks of hardware in every POP and every data center.
Right.
They're typically trying to get away from that.
Yeah.
They're typically trying to have less hardware,
Yeah.
smaller number of vendors. And they typically are trying to solve issues around not what is the performance on a given link, not did my video game or my video traffic or game traffic drop just at this point solution. But they're really trying to understand from a holistic perspective,
Absolutely.
there is a performance drop. Can I detect it before my customers do? Before my customers start tweeting? Or before my customers get fed up enough that they do call my call center and I have to deploy a truck?
Right, right.
Can I understand a drop in a performance as it relates to a point of presence, a router, a market, an interface, a data center? So again, it really is dealing with not just traffic volumes, but in real time, can you understand enough of the service, enough of the topology,
Right.
enough of the service delivery to identify the source of the issue or issues?
Right. So, the plurality of your business is with cable operators at the moment. Do you think is that because they handle a lot of video and video is particularly challenging to manage for network operators?
No, I think that as a small company, you have a go-to-market strategy. Coming out with the DNA of the company where it was,
Yeah.
We had a natural market with some very specific use cases to address. But as we get into 16 and even the latter half of 15, I think our market has moved well beyond cable to include a much broader section of telecom,
Right.
as well as content and infrastructure, the
Right.
CDN companies as well.
Right. And your product, as you said, combines network management and analytics. It's not a pure analytics play. That seems quite important. Is that part of a trend in analytics, or are other companies sort of following in your footsteps there, do you feel?
Yeah, I think at the heart of the technology, we are a big data company. We often, though, don't market ourselves as a big data company.
It's kind of a bad term these days because the publishers got hold of it about 8 years ago and destroyed it.
It is like the term SDN or
Yeah,
cloud,
right.
where it has been used. But I think while it is easy to, I think, poke fun at the abuse or misuse of the term big data, I think that there are some central bits of technology that really are transformational and have
Right.
changed. In the way that you can now understand very large data center, very large infrastructure. So it is a very important piece.
Yeah.
And again, going back to other companies I've been involved with, I was involved with previously very successful traffic engineering analytics companies. But back in 2000, 1999, it is really a different world in terms of the capabilities that you can bring to solve some of these problems. Back again, my previous company, we were an appliance vendor. Today, with software, with an increasingly virtualized world with much more robust data sets available, it really is a different level of capabilities that are available and that we can help provide to the market.
What about IoT? It's another technology which we've heard a lot about for quite a long time, but it does seem like it's starting to become something which is really important to service providers. Is it an application, or is it a trend that you are hearing more about? Is it something that you are making money from right now, or if not, when do you think it'll be a real market for you?
Yeah, it is something that certainly is of growing interest to the community. Quite frankly, I think many of the service providers are still trying to understand how they can make money from this evolution. Yeah. We certainly see it come up in a number of contexts, chiefly one of them being the security context. As part of the analytics we provide, we do track different types of end devices, including the growing number of IoT devices. So it actually has been quite fascinating just within some of the work we do to watch from front doors to garage door openers. For a very long time, as with many technologies, light reading and others will write about things, and it often takes a period before they actually become broad market adoption. But I think from what we are seeing in the market, there is clearly a growing number of these devices in the consumer space. Yeah. And of course, the even bigger story is within the enterprise, within the fleet, where there's a lot of activity. So I think generally, to answer your question, I think the market is still trying to understand where the value is, what the infrastructure looks like. Right. And there are just a number of competing platforms and technology stacks that still are sorting themselves out in the marketplace.
I mean, you've been at this for 5 years now. Obviously, things have gone very well for you. I mean, you've got terrific market penetration already. Where do you think the company is going to go in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, we're really excited about, as I mentioned earlier, this broad shift in orchestration, network management. In terms of the key market drivers, virtualization, cloud, orchestration, and we think they were just really well aligned with a shift for the evolution of building services, of running data centers, of managing very large and complex network and service infrastructure. So we've seen great success within telecom. We have seen success in 2015 within other market segments, and we'd like to both expand within the current telecom base, as well as continue the expansion in some of these additional market segments that all have large, the common theme. Yeah. Large, complex network data center infrastructure. Yeah.
Very cool. Craig, thanks so much for coming in and talking to us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.